So you gave her yours? Yes. Yeah.
All right, let's go on the record. The record will reflect the presence of all jurors, all counsel, and the defendant are present. Hope you all had a nice long weekend. Thank you very much for being on time. All right, Mr. Owens, next witness.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is John Johnson. John. John-S-O-N.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, Detective Johnson.
Morning, sir.
All right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Johnson, we've heard your name quite a bit over the course of the last week, but now we want to hear from you in terms of some of the follow-up investigation you did into the reported rapes that had occurred in the spring of 2018, and as well as a indecent exposure incident that happened on May 24th of 2018. Is it fair to say that you became the primary investigator into those offenses from the Sheriff's Department Sexual Assault Unit?
That would be fair.
When was it that you first became involved in this investigation?
On May 14th of 2018, I received a call out of a sexual assault examination, and that would be involving Jane Doe II.
Was your first direct participation in that investigation when you responded to the sexual assault exam at the hospital?
At the SART facility, yes.
Did you in fact arrive after Nurse Ann Williams had already begun her sexual assault examination?
I arrived after the interview part was in progress, yes.
Were you briefed on the information that had been developed, at least as of that point in time, by the area detectives who were involved?
Yes.
Did that include Detective Adrian Moses?
Yes.
Did he inform you that a suspect had been identified at that point?
Yes.
And was that pursuant to a photographic lineup administered to Jane Doe number 2?
That's what they told me, yes.
Once you had that information, did you in fact seize evidence following the sexual assault exam that was conducted with Jane Doe 2?
I seized the sexual assault kit, the forensic kit that they collected a couple days later when it was processed by them.
In terms of the chain of custody process for the collection of the sexual assault kit, can you explain to the jury what you did?
I went to the facility. This particular facility was in Escondido, and met with Julissa, I believe that's Julissa, one of their clerks. And she went to the recesses of the facility and brought out paper sacks that were taped and sealed and initialed, and printed out a report and some paperwork, and I signed for that and took it away.
Is that the standard protocol from the Sheriff's Department Sexual Assault Unit in the collection of a SART kit?
That's pretty standard, yes.
Did you in fact receive the SART kit and book it into evidence under case ending 974 of the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, I did.
Did you submit any requests from the Sheriff's Department Crime Lab in relation to that SART kit?
Yes, when we impound a SART kit, we're actually required to request labs on the kit to get the process started.
And did you do so in this case?
Yes, I did.
Did you request DNA analysis of the items that had been seized and sealed within those evidence collection bags or the kit itself?
I asked them to develop a DNA profile and analyze it if they possibly could, certainly.
Now, in addition to the collection of the SART kit itself and the request for any DNA analysis, did you attempt to conduct some initial follow-up investigation by speaking with Jane Doe 2 herself?
Oh, certainly.
And at least in terms of when you spoke to Jane Doe 2, what date was that?
Well, during the SART exam, I listened to as much of the story as I was present for and asked her follow-up questions. That would have been May 14th.
And going forward in the weeks that followed, once you had a suspect identified in that photographic lineup, did you attempt to continue to investigate the case?
Yes.
On May 24th of 2018, did you receive information about another crime that had occurred in the city of Encinitas involving a person who matched the description for your case?
Yes, I did.
What information did you receive and how?
I know that a report was assigned to me, and I believe that I received a phone call from the area sergeant in the North Coastal Station informing me that indecent exposure had been reported, and they thought maybe I would wanted to look into that.
Did that incident, or was that reported incident, did it take place on Lake Drive in the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
Were you aware of the address associated with the suspect, Kellen Winslow, that you were investigating? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was that residence also on Lake Drive?
Yes.
What did you do based upon the information that was given to you initially about the indecent exposure incident on May 24th?
Well, I read the report that that the deputy took. I, at some point, watched his body-worn camera footage, and at some point, I went out and spoke with the reported victim of that crime.
And is that a person who we're referring to as Jane Doe number 3?
That would be correct.
When you met with Jane Doe number 3, did you have a Vietnamese-speaking deputy also present with you?
Yes, I did.
What date is it that you met with Jane Doe number 3?
I do believe that was June 7th.
When you first met with Jane Doe number 3 was on June 7th?
I think I met with her earlier than that alone, but with the translator it would have been June 7th, I'm pretty sure.
Let me ask you about the first time that you met with her. Do you recall the date that you actually sat down and met with Jane Doe number 3 the very first time?
I'd have to look at my report. I don't remember the exact date, no.
Would it refresh your recollection to refer to your report as to the date that you first met with her?
Certainly. Give me a moment, please.
report in
Yeah,
front of you?
I do.
As it relates to your attempts to interview and meet with Jane Doe number 3, when was it that you first made contact with her?
Well, there was a couple of phone messages exchanged, but I don't have a date for an earlier meeting listed than the actual June 7th date.
Did you in fact speak, or at least contact her on May 25th of 2018 and speak to her husband?
I got a voicemail on May 25th from her husband.
And when you spoke to her husband, did he inform you that she was a native Vietnamese speaker?
At some point, yes.
Did you make arrangements to have a Vietnamese-speaking deputy present for when you would meet with her?
Yes.
And did you arrange to actually meet with her on June 7th, 2018?
Yes.
When you personally met with Jane Doe number 3, did you, in advance of that meeting, did you prepare a photographic lineup to show her?
I had one prepared. I may have prepared it myself. I don't recall who prepared it, but yes.
And in terms of when you met with her, did you talk to her about what had happened?
Yes.
Did she primarily speak in Vietnamese or in English when you talked with her?
Well, it was primarily in broken English. I believe I understood most of it, but I made sure any admonishments formally stated to her were actually admonished in Vietnamese.
And was that by the deputy who had accompanied you?
That would be by Sergeant Min Nguyen.
And is that spelled M-I-N-H, last name N-G-U-Y-E-N?
Yes, it is.
And when that admonishment was provided to Jane Doe number 3, did she appear to understand what was explained to her?
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened when you presented the photographic lineup to Jane Doe 3?
Yes, what I usually do, so I don't exercise any undue influence, what I did this time is I put the photo lineup in a manila folder, and I put it down and step back from that so that they can open it and first pick it up. My fingers wouldn't be inadvertently pointing any picture or anything like that. She opened it and she just barely glanced at it and stated essentially she didn't see the suspect there, didn't recognize anybody. I encouraged her to take a few seconds at least, take a few moments and look it over. That's what most people would do and examine each photo. And again, she just kind of glanced at it and just said that she didn't recognize anybody.
When you met with her on June 7th and attempted to show her the photographic lineup, did she appear to be upset?
Yes.
Was she willing to actually sit and look through the 6 photographs that were presented to her?
Well, it didn't appear to me she was truly looking at the 6 photographs with any kind of decisive behavior. It appeared to me she didn't want to look at them.
Now, in terms of her description of the suspect, did that description that she had provided, did that match Kellen Winslow, the suspect in the rape of Jane Doe number 2?
There were consistencies, yes.
Now, based upon that information, did you attempt to follow up on the potential participation in that act by Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
Now let me ask you in terms of June 7th of 2018, the same day that you were administering the photo lineup to Jane Doe 3, had Mr. Winslow been contacted by the San Diego Sheriff's Department driving a black Hummer H2? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was a DNA swab collected by Deputy Sean Dwyer that day?
I watched Sean Dwyer collect a DNA sample from the inner cheek of Mr. Winslow, yes.
Was that sample then packaged pursuant to Sheriff's protocol and then passed along to you personally from Deputy Dwyer?
I want to say that it was put in the envelope right in my presence, and he handed it to me. I didn't want him to impound it. I wanted to impound it directly.
And did you in fact impound it directly under Sheriff's case number ending 974?
Yes.
And did you label those as being DNA oral swabs from Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
Did you submit that DNA reference sample from Mr. Winslow for comparison to the SART kit that had been collected from Jane Doe number 2?
Yes.
And was that request submitted to the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Lab?
Yes, it was.
Now, going forward from June 7th of 2018, following that contact with Mr. Winslow, did the Sheriff's Department take any action as it related to a surveillance operation of Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
When was it that a surveillance operation was initiated by the Sheriff's Department in relation to June 7th?
When you say initiated, what do we mean exactly?
So let me ask you first, in terms of being the lead investigator, did you obtain a number of warrants through the San Diego Superior Court during the course of your investigation?
Yes, I did.
On June 8th of 2018, did you obtain a search warrant that allowed for video recording of a residence in San Diego County?
Yes, we commonly call it a poll cam warrant, and for the placement of a video type device in a nondescript position, a telephone pole if you will, in a neighborhood so we can watch the location.
Now, can you just explain to the jury the process by which you obtained a search warrant in order to be able to use a poll cam?
Well, I took the information that I had up to that point with the case, and I wrote out a warrant affidavit explaining what I was looking to search for, the location, what information I was seeking to gather, spelling out my experience that qualified me to make a judgment call, and what I hope to gain from it. And I submitted that to a Superior Court judge, and that judge agreed that I had cause to issue a search warrant and to look for that data.
What division of the Sheriff's Department participated in the surveillance operation that included the use of the poll cam?
There were a number of people involved, but it all fell under what I call the Special Investigations Division, SID.
Now, did the Special Investigations Division participate in a surveillance while using that poll cam beginning June 8th of 2018 and then continuing until June 14th of 2018?
So from, yes, from the wee hours of June 8th of 2018, the Special Investigations Division, a group of them, and they rotated through, actually had eyes on or hard surveillance of the location we were looking at, as well as a subdivision of that unit was able at some point within that day or the next day, I can't recall, to put up an actual poll cam that can be monitored on various devices through Wi-Fi or whatever means we look at it, and they essentially for about 7 days did a hard surveillance.
And in terms of the poll cam itself, is that something that is surreptitiously placed actually on a telephone pole?
Well, I hope it's surreptitious. I suppose some people might recognize it, but when I've seen them do it, they dress up in all the construction worker type clothing and put these things where hopefully no one would notice what they are.
Now, once that poll cam had been installed on June 8th, did you have an opportunity to review any footage that had been recorded by that poll cam on June 8th, 2018?
Yes, I both viewed it real time, on an irregular basis. I would log in and look at certain things, and then at the close of that portion of the active investigation, I had a chance to review some of the data that was recorded from the poll cam early on.
Now, when you say that you would be able to periodically review the footage yourself, were you also in communication with the SID team sergeant who was spearheading the actual surveillance operation at times?
I was getting a lot of text messages and phone calls throughout, yes.
And were you communicating constantly with the SID team regarding their observations on a given shift?
Not constantly, but I'd certainly overhear or be privy to things on a very, very regular basis, yes.
Did you receive any information regarding whether or not the suspect vehicle, the black Hummer H2, whether that was located at the residence associated with Mr. Winslow?
Yes, that was seen at least several times at the residence.
On June 8th of 2018, when the pole cam had been installed and was operational, was that placed in a location where it would be able to record the happenings at the residence where Mr. Winslow lived on Lake Drive?
Well, yes, it had a view into the inner compound, if you will, not into the house itself, but the inner compound facing the garage doors on the detached garage, and also the entryway from Lake Drive into the compound. And of course, the system is rigged in such a way where an operator can actually move the camera and zoom and pull back.
Now, have you actually been to that residence?
Yes, I have.
And is that located in the 1300 block of Lake Drive?
Yes, it is.
Would you characterize that as being on the north end of the street close to Santa Fe Drive?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I can alert the media as to the display of the next exhibit.
All right.
Showing you what's been marked as People's or Courts Exhibit 6 for identification. Do you see the bubble that is positioned in the center of this map?
Yes.
And do you see that that would be the location of the residence on Lake Drive?
That would be consistent, yes.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach briefly?
All right. On the record?
No, it can be off the record.
Okay. All right, the court met with counsel in an unreported sidebar conference. I'm going to order the media not publish court exhibit number 6. It has the defendant's address on it, so that address is not to be published or reported. All right, next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would just give the same advisal that in one moment the people will be displaying the same exhibit.
All right.
I'm showing you Courts Exhibit 49. Is this the front entrance to the residence where Mr. Winslow resided?
Yes.
And is that in the on Lake Drive, the area that we're discussing?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the poll cam footage that you had an opportunity to review, did you in fact speak with the SID team, review the footage itself, and receive information regarding what happened to the Hummer H2 on June 8th of 2018.
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Courts Exhibit 120 for identification. You see what's depicted here?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you tell us what we're looking at Courts Exhibit 120?
Well, from the angle of the pole cam, facing into the compound, a truck pulled in that appeared to be a on-site vehicle detailing mobile business, and came in and did its business.
And looking at Courts Exhibit 120, do you actually see the mobile detailing truck depicted in the driveway area?
Yes,
Did that arrive at approximately 1:37 p.m. on June 8th?
that would be correct.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 121, does this show the detail truck now parked in the front driveway area adjacent to the garage?
Yes, it does.
Is that at the same time of 1:37 p.m.?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 122 at 1:39 p.m., does it show that the detailer is now preparing to conduct the detail?
That's what it shows.
Showing you now 1:43 p.m. on Courts Exhibit 123. Does that show the Hummer H2 being retrieved from the garage area?
It shows it backing out, yes.
Detective Johnson, is it fair to say that these are just a series of still shots from the actual recording that we're not going to play because it would be too long, but does this accurately depict those screenshots from the video recording from the poll cam?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 124 at 1:45 p.m. Does that show the detailer essentially doing his work currently on the outside of the vehicle?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 125. Does that have a timestamp of 1:47 p.m.?
Yes.
Does that show the detailer continuing to do his work?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 126 at 1:52 p.m. Does that show the detailer now working on the interior portion of the Hummer H2?
Yes, it even appeared that he was spraying the interior. That was the strange thing.
Now showing Courts Exhibit 127. Does that have a timestamp of 3:05 p.m.? So now we're approximately an hour and a half into the detailing.
Hold on a second. That's correct.
And does that show him retrieving some of his equipment?
That's what it looks like.
Now showing Courts Exhibit 128 at 3:34 p.m. Has the Hummer H2 been returned into the garage area?
Yes.
And showing Courts Exhibit 129 at 3:39 p.m. Does that show the mobile detailing unit leaving the area?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the surveillance operation that was done, you mentioned that it continued until June 14th of 2018, is that right?
That's correct.
On June 14th of 2018, did you attempt to obtain, or pardon me, prior to the June 14th date, in addition to the search warrant that you obtained in order to record the area that we're seeing in this exhibit, did you also obtain a search warrant to place a GPS tracker on the suspect vehicle, the Hummer H2?
Yes, I did.
When did you do that?
I want to say the warrant was obtained actually before June 7th. We couldn't place the tracker because the vehicle was inaccessible. The pole cam went up and the tracker was placed actually on, the vehicle was parked at some point on June 7th in a public parking lot. At that point, the tracker was placed and a warrant was executed to be able to track the warrant.
Can you explain to the jury what a GPS tracker does and how it works in terms of law enforcement's surveillance techniques?
To some extent. What we essentially do is take a small electronic device that can be surreptitiously attached to a vehicle or some other device, a bicycle or anything, and it gives us the ability, it sends out GPS information at different, I lost my word, sorry. At different intervals.
Intervals?
Different intervals, which we can monitor either real time through a computer or some sort of computer device, or we can monitor later, and in fact the systems that we use actually stockpile the data so we can go back and look at patterns and see where people have been.
Does it provide both real-time and historical information?
Yes, it does.
In terms of the GPS tracker on the Hummer H2 associated with Mr. Winslow, was that being monitored in conjunction with the surveillance done by the Special Investigations Division?
Yes, it was.
In addition to the poll cam and the GPS tracker warrant that was in place, did you also obtain a search warrant for the residence of, that we're talking about on the 1300 block of Lake Drive?
Yes, I did.
Did you obtain that search warrant from a Superior Court judge on June 14th of 2018?
Yes.
Did you also obtain an arrest warrant for the suspect Kellen Winslow on that same date?
Yes.
Were the arrest warrant and the search warrant concurrently executed on the afternoon of June 14th?
Within minutes of one another, yes.
Was Mr. Winslow in fact taken into custody?
Yes.
Did you see him that day, yes or no?
Yes.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor?
All right.
Showing you what's been marked for identification as Corpse Exhibit 36. Do you recognize this as being the way in which Mr. Winslow looked on June 14th of 2018?
Yes.
Now, in terms of you as the lead investigator as well as other members of the Sheriff's Department, is it fair to say that you weren't present during the execution of the search warrant at the residence that afternoon? At least initially when it was being done.
I had to delegate that to other people, correct.
Now, when Mr. Winslow was taken into custody on June 14th, did he have a cell phone on him?
Yes.
Was that cell phone seized?
Yes.
Who was it that seized that item and what did you do with it?
That would be me. I took the cell phone. At some point, I was actually able to obtain a passcode for the cell phone. And then I placed the cell phone in airplane mode so it could not be remotely erased. And then I impounded that cell phone into sheriff's evidence.
Now, when you impounded that into sheriff's evidence, did you in fact recruit or at least enlist the help of a sheriff's analyst in order to conduct a download of the cell phone?
Yes, I find it's better to use the analysts who are trained to do that sort of thing to do the technical workups on devices like that.
And did you in fact do so in this case?
Yes, I did.
Who was it that conducted the cell phone download of Mr. Winslow's phone that was seized on his person on June 14th?
Haley McKinney, H-A-I-L-E-Y, M-C-K-I-N-N-E-Y.
And we're going to hear from Ms. McKinney sometime today. But let me ask you in terms of what you directly did. Did you in fact request that photographs be taken of Mr. Winslow in addition to the one that we're seeing in Court's Exhibit 36?
Well, I had several photographs of Mr. Winslow taken, yes.
Thank you. And I'd like to go through them if we can. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
So beginning with Court's Exhibit 36. Does that show the front facial area of Mr. Winslow on June 14th?
Yes.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit 37 for identification. What does that show?
That would be the left side of Mr. Winslow, now only wearing his skivvy shorts.
Does that show the tattoo that extends from his left shoulder to the top of his left shoulder down towards his forearm?
It shows his sleeve tattoo, yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 38 for identification. Would this be the same perspective but just from the right side now?
That's correct.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit, does that also show a sleeve tattoo that extends from his right shoulder all the way down to his wrist?
I believe they call it a full sleeve tattoo, yes.
Is that consistent with the description given by Jane Doe number 3?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 39 for identification, is that a close-up view of the same left tattoo area?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 40, does that show a tattoo with the initial K and the number 2?
Yes, it does.
And are you aware of whether or not that is a nickname that's used for Mr. Winslow?
I've seen it several times associated with Mr. Winslow, yes.
Does Court's Exhibit 40 show the right upper arm area in a close-up fashion, primarily upon the bicep and the left shoulder?
Well, I do believe that's the left upper arm, but
I
yes.
misspoke, I apologize. Showing you now Court's Exhibit 41, what does that show?
I don't have it up here, but that would be the lower part of his left forearm and the tattoo that's there.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 42 for identification. Do you see that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And does that show Mr. Winslow's back area and the tattoos that are contained there?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 43 for identification. Is this a now close-in view of his right arm extending from his shoulder down towards his wrist?
Yes.
And does that show a large U on the shoulder area?
That's what it appears to be.
Is that the emblem of the University of Miami, if you know?
That's what I've been told.
Is that where Mr. Winslow played football?
That's what my research has shown.
Now, looking at the rest of the tattoo, does it have a series of black lines that extend down in a tribal pattern all the way through his right forearm?
Yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 44, what does that show?
It's a more close-up view of what we've just discussed, the U and the tribal markings.
Showing Court's Exhibit 45, what's shown there?
Again, we see the lower part of the right arm with the single color, if you will, or darker color tribal tattoo markings.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit 46 for identification, what does that display?
And that would be consistent with Mr. Winslow's right side, right arm, lower portion down to his wrist with the same sort of tattooed markings.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 47. Is there a tattoo on the left forearm area?
Yes,
And what's contained there?
it's wording, without struggle, there is no progress.
And now showing you Court's Exhibit 48 for identification. What's shown there?
This would be what I believe is the right lower but inner arm of Mr. Winslow.
Now, Detective Johnson, I know we're talking about various dates that were associated with your follow-up investigation, but these photographs were taken on June 14th, correct?
Yes.
Was the Hummer H2 located and seized on June 14th of 2018?
Yes, it was.
Was that seized at the residence or at a different location?
At a different location.
Generally speaking, what part of town was the Hummer H2 seized at?
It was a portion of San Diego. I don't know that area real well, but I want to say it's the Mission Bay type area, more coastal.
And were there detectives from the Sheriff's Department who, in fact, responded to that location based upon the GPS tracker coordinates?
Yes.
Was the Hummer H2 being monitored by active surveillance or with actually hard surveillance? I think you used that term, with eyes on.
At some point, they had followed the H2. However, I believe they broke off that surveillance because it was not being driven by Mr. Winslow, but by somebody else. So they primarily used the GPS tracker to follow it, and then at some point there was some hard surveillance or eyes on that drove by the location where it was supposed to be parked to verify that it was there.
Now, when that was done on June 14th, do you recall the date that the Hummer was last seen at the Winslow residence on Lake Drive?
I thought it left on June 8th or June 9th, but I can't be sure about that.
So if it was detailed on June 8th, as we were just discussing, based upon the poll cam exhibits, would it refresh your recollection to refer to the additional exhibits showing that area?
If they're the poll cam exhibits, probably will.
So beginning with Court's Exhibit 130 for identification, do you recognize what's depicted there?
Yes, I do.
What is the date and time stamp on Court's Exhibit 130?
June 11, or actually 6/11/2018, at approximately 9:41 a.m.
Does that refresh your recollection as to the last time that the Hummer H2 was seen at the Winslow residence?
Yes, the events there are, the video depicted in this clip, or from this clip, is the video where we see the Hummer drive off.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 130 for identification, is that the one that you're describing right now?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what's seen there?
Well, the H2 is in the main compound outside of the garage area, and there's a blue, I'll call it a four-door hatchback that's in the compound as well.
And the blue vehicle that you're seeing, is that, are you able to describe the make and model of it?
Well, probably on Exhibit 131 I can.
So then moving to Court's Exhibit 131, first, what is the date and time stamp associated with that?
That would be June 11th, 2018 at approximately 09:42 a.m.
And looking at that exhibit, do you see any individuals that are present?
I see Mr. Winslow apparently walking out from his home towards the vehicles.
And the second vehicle would be, what would be the make and model of the blue vehicle?
You know, I see the words and I see the make, and I just can't be sure. It looks like a Range Rover, but I just don't know.
Do you see that there's also a white Tesla that's parked in the garage area?
Yes,
And is it fair to say that that would be Mr. Winslow's wife's car?
yes,
Based upon the surveillance?
apparently so, yes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 132 for identification, what would be the date and time stamp of this whole cam still shot?
June 11th, 2018, 10:09 a.m.
And do you see that there is another individual that's now present around the vehicle? Or
Yeah,
another?
yes, there's two other individuals, apparently a smaller built female, close to Mr. Winslow, and then apparently a male wearing a white shirt and it looks like dark shorts on the driver's side of the H2.
And based upon your review of this surveillance video, did that person who's wearing the white shirt, did he arrive in the blue Range Rover?
Yes.
And can you just explain to the jury, based upon your review, what was happening here?
Well, it appeared that the vehicle was being checked over and then driven away by that male. Looks like it's being sold or borrowed or taken away.
Showing Court's Exhibit 133, when you say that it was being checked over, did the male wearing the white shirt who arrived in the Range Rover, did he look through the exterior and the interior portion of the car?
Yes.
Showing now Court's Exhibit 134 for identification, does that show now the blue Range Rover being driven away from the residence?
Well, it's June 11th, 2018 at 10:21 in the morning, and we see the Range Rover starting to depart.
Do you see whether or not the Hummer H2 is doing the same?
Well, in this photo, you can see that it started to back up, or it's moved from its position going backwards, if you will.
And who was seen driving the Hummer H2 at this point?
Well, that would be the male that arrived, the one in the white shirt.
And was there in fact a female occupant and driver of the blue Range Rover that was seen driving away?
Yes.
And lastly, showing you Court's Exhibit 135 for identification, what does that show?
It shows the H2 departing the Winslow compound, and that's the last time that I ever saw it present there.
Now, was the GPS tracker, once it departed the residence on Lake Drive, did that remain active and it ultimately led to the seizure on June 14th?
Yes.
In terms of follow-up investigation that was done regarding the Hummer H2, did you request to have it forensically processed?
Absolutely.
With the Sheriff's Department, who is it that processes a vehicle forensically?
Under the Sheriff's Crime Lab, they have field evidence technicians, FETs or CSI, some like to call them, that actually do the scientific examinations like that.
And the FETs or CSI that you're referring to, is that actually a division within the Sheriff's Crime Lab made up of criminalists who've been trained in that area?
Yes.
And in terms of you as the detective, how is it that you alert the crime lab to the need to forensically process something?
Well, there's a couple ways. Certainly in this case, I called them an email as well to arrange for it, but I also have to fill out a lab services request to get it on their schedule and get it taken care of.
And were you present for that forensic processing, or was that done by the criminalists themselves?
Well, the criminalists did the processing themselves, but I was present. Also, was in the garage at the old sheriff's evidence. I was the one present for that as well. They want to have a detective present when they're doing their work.
Now, we're going to be jumping forward to a couple other areas of your investigation that you followed up on, just so we don't have to call you another time. But in terms of some of the evidence that was seized during the execution of the search warrant, that was done on June 14th at this same residence, correct?
The execution of the house search warrant, yes, that would be the same location and the same date. That's true.
Once those items had been impounded into evidence, did you then go back to look at the list of impounded items to determine whether or not there were any articles of clothing that were consistent with the description given by any one of the victims.
Yes, I did.
Showing you what's been marked as Courts Exhibit 60 for identification. Do you see what's depicted here?
Yes, that appears to be a blue backpack.
Is that blue backpack consistent with the one described by Jane Doe number 3?
In its color, yes.
And in terms of the impounding of the items of evidence and the photographing of where this item was located, that, is it fair to say that was done by the field evidence technician who responded to the search warrant on June 14th?
Yes,
Would that be Brandy Silverthorne?
yes.
So then directing your attention to Courts Exhibit 61 for identification, do you recognize what's depicted here?
Yes, it appears to be a one-piece bicycle or workout type suit.
And is this, these photographs, were they actually items of clothing that were laid out on butcher paper at the sheriff's department?
Yes,
And was this recovered from the residence?
yes,
Showing Courts Exhibit 62 for identification, does that show that same article of clothing, just from the reverse?
yes.
What would be the coloring that you, or can you just describe the color of that item?
Well, it's darker in the bottom and lighter in the top. I call it white and black.
Showing Courts Exhibit 63 for identification, does that show that same article, same item?
Yes,
Showing Courts Exhibit 64 for identification, do you see what this is?
yes. That's an overshirt, a zippered overshirt, common for working out or bicyclists.
Is there a particular emblem that's visible on the exhibit?
There's an orange emblem, but the word Strava is very clear.
Is that on the right chest area?
Yes,
And does that look as though it's like a pullover or a outer garment?
yes,
Showing you Courts Exhibit 65 for identification, were each of these items actually seized at the residence on June 14th of 2018?
yes.
And you see what this is on Courts Exhibit 65?
That's the same shirt that we've zoomed in on the word Strava.
Showing Courts Exhibit 66 for identification, does that show the emblem you were referring to?
Yes,
Showing Courts Exhibit 67 for identification, does this show another pullover?
I'm not sure if that's the same one. I thought that's the same one. Am I mistaken?
Going back?
Yeah, that's the same one.
And does it show the left chest area?
Yes,
Showing Courts Exhibit 68 for identification, is that a close-up of the left chest area?
yes,
Showing you Courts Exhibit 69 for identification, they show the back area of that same garment.
that's what that is.
And showing you Courts Exhibit 70, does that show the lower portion area?
The little pockets in the lower back part, yes.
Would you characterize this as cycling uniform or cycling attire?
Yes, I would.
Now, we're talking about some of the processing that was done by others, as well as your review of the items that were recovered. Were there a number of electronic devices that were seized at the Winslow residence on June 14th?
Yes, there was.
What did you do as the lead investigator as it relates to those items?
Well, at some point, I obtained, I believe, a separate search warrant for the actual electronic forensic search of the data on those items. And then I transported those items to a couple of different law enforcement forensic labs so that their people could go into the items and try to bring out whatever information they could.
Are you familiar with the term RCFL?
Yes, I am.
Is that the Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory?
Yes, it is.
is there an RCFL in different locations throughout the state?
In different regions, there's different RCFLs, yes.
And I'm not going to ask you about any technical expertise, that's going to be for another witness, but in terms of when items are forensically examined at your request, once they've been forensically examined and the data that's contained within them is downloaded, is that then provided to you as the investigator for review?
They give me a separate working copy of all the data that they've extracted so I can go through it without corrupting the original data on the device.
And was that in fact done with a number of different devices that were seized at the Winslow residence?
Yes, it was.
Did that include digital images, digital video recordings, and photographs, things of that nature?
Yes.
In terms of the devices that were seized on June 14th, did that include a GoPro camera that can be either mounted on a bicycle or a helmet or things of that nature?
There's a GoPro camera, yes.
Was that forensically examined?
Yes.
Were there a number of laptop computers that were likewise forensically examined?
Yes.
Was different data from the laptop computers, was that then provided to you for review?
To myself and my analyst, yes.
Were there also a number of digital cameras, hard drives, things of that nature?
Yes.
Was there a DVR that was linked to a home surveillance system also recovered?
Yes, there was.
Is it fair to say that some of the surveillance system that was in place at the Winslow residence was cloud-based and didn't store the surveillance locally on the actual items that were seized?
Objection on the foundation.
Overall, it's a yes or no question. You can answer it if you know the answer.
I don't know if there was cloud-based, but the DVR stopped at a certain date, so I assumed that it probably went on through some other system which I never located.
And in terms of the hard drive of the DVR for the surveillance system that was downloaded that you did review, did that include the date range of March 17th of 2018?
Yes, it did.
And did you in fact review some surveillance footage that was that depicted the front curtilage area or the front driveway area of Mr. Winslow's home?
Yes, I did.
Did you also review a video that appears to have been taken from a GoPro device that was mounted on the front of Mr. Winslow's bicycle?
Well, it appeared to be mounted on his bicycle, but I didn't see the bicycle.
It's based upon the perspective of the camera, is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yes.
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 91 for identification. You see what's depicted there?
Yes, I do.
Is that a still image from that GoPro video recording?
Yes, it is.
And was this contained within the data that you personally reviewed that was returned to you from the Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory?
Yes.
Looking at that still shot, can you describe what's seen there?
Well, that appears to be Mr. Winslow in bicycle attire next to a red box, if you will, at some sort of gas station or convenience store.
When you say a red box, is that one of those DVD distribution units at different locations?
That's what a red box would be, yes.
And are you able to see the any writing on that article of clothing that's depicted there?
The shorts, there's a word that looks very similar to Strava. I only see the first couple of letters, though.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 91 for identification. I know it's a little washed out when we're looking at it in a well-lit courtroom, but are you able to see that writing that's on the right leg area of the bicycle shorts?
Well, again, I see it there, but I don't see it any more clearly than I see it on the digital screen up top.
So Detective Johnson, have you reviewed the actual video that shows these, that contains these still images?
Yes, on the video it's clear because with the movements and such, you can actually make out the words better.
Does it say Strava?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 92 for identification. Does that show Mr. Winslow at least attempting to place an item into his backpack area?
It's what it looks like. The small of his back has pockets and he's reaching back there.
And what type of shoes is he wearing?
Well, they're what I call bicyclist shoes in that there appears to be a little mounting disc or block under the front of the shoes, and typically those, in my experience, lock into pedals on higher-end bikes or with more serious bicyclists.
Showing Courts Exhibit 93 for identification. Does that show Mr. Winslow now with his back turned?
Yes,
What does he have on his back?
a backpack.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 94 for identification. Does that show Mr. Winslow now stretching towards the right?
Yep.
And showing you Courts Exhibit 95 for identification. Does that show Mr. Winslow stretching to the left?
Yes.
And are his tattoos visible in these different photographs?
Throughout the different photographs, there's tattooing that's consistent with the tattoos that I've seen Mr. Winslow with in other environments, yes.
Now, in addition to the GoPro video, is it fair to say that there are a number of, in addition to this GoPro video, are there a number of different videos that were downloaded that show Mr. Winslow riding his bicycle in different areas that are in North County, San Diego? We'll just describe it that way.
There's a number of videos that depict North County, San Diego that seem to be a bicyclist riding through these areas. In some of the shots, I can see a reflection from a window or such that appears to be Mr. Winslow, but the presumption is that he's riding his bike. But
Now, in addition to that, we talked about the DVR of the surveillance system. Did you have an opportunity to review the footage from March 17th of 2018?
yes,
Showing you Courts Exhibit 96 for identification. Do you see what's depicted there?
yes.
Can you describe first the date and time stamp that was contained on the video footage that was downloaded from that DVR of the surveillance system?
In the still shot, it appears to be March 17th, 2018. It looks like it says SAT. I assume that's a Saturday. And the time is more difficult. There's something 32.
Is that 02, 32, and 33 seconds p.m.?
Oh, it's PM, so it's 02, so that'd be, yes, 2:32 in the afternoon.
And can you just describe what it shows?
Well, I've watched the video, so it's clear, but the picture is Mr. Winslow walking out from the house area. The video system appears to be motion activated, so at some point it begins recording, and it shows him walking towards the garage area wearing his workout type clothes, so the white shoes, some shorts, and a dark shirt.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 97 for identification. Does that contain a video, again, from this motion-activated surveillance system with another date and timestamp?
Yes, that'd be March 17th, 2018, and now we're looking at about 2:33 in the afternoon, and we see the H2, the Hummer, starting to drive out of the compound.
Did that Hummer actually reverse out of the garage area and leave the compound?
On the video, yes.
And now showing you Courts Exhibit 98 for identification. What is the date and time stamp that's seen here?
And now we have the same date, March 17th, 2018, but the timestamp is 4:52 p.m. and it shows the H2 re-entering the compound from the street area.
Based upon your review of the data that was available on that DVR, did you see Mr. Winslow at the residence in that location or the Hummer H2 at the residence in that location at any time between 2:33 and 4:52 p.m.?
Between those times?
Correct.
No, it appeared he was gone.
nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, Kraus?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Johnson, you sat in the interview with Jane Doe 2 at the SART exam, is that right?
Most of it, yes, sir.
Yeah. Those SART exams are very important, right?
I think so, yes.
Okay. And when you listened to the interview, you saw the SART nurse speaking with Jane Doe 2, right?
Yes,
And Jane Doe 2 was telling what happened, right?
yes.
And she never said, in fact, what she did say was, they never had any conversations about sex, isn't that right?
Prior to that evening, correct.
So at that SART exam, she told the SART nurse and you, as you were sitting there, that Kevin and her never had any conversations about sex, right?
Prior to that evening, correct.
Right. And in fact, the first time you heard about Jane Doe 2 saying that they did in fact have conversations about sex and money was right before the preliminary hearing, isn't that right?
Yes,
That was the first time you ever heard that, right?
that'd be correct.
So all the other detectives that she spoke with, she never brought that up, right?
No, I don't believe it ever came out. It certainly would have been something I would have noticed.
Right. And so the first time you hear it is right before she's about to testify for the first time under penalty of perjury, right?
I want to say it's I'm not sure how it was communicated to me, but that would be the time frame, correct?
Right. You did hear Jane Doe 2 say she described the sex that occurred, is that right? She described the sex
Yes,
to the SART nurse, and she described vaginal intercourse, is that right?
yes.
And then when she talked about anal contact, she said, quote, she thought that was an accident, right?
She thought it might have been an accident. She didn't know, yeah.
Right. And you documented that in your report, right?
Oh, yes.
And you actually put it in quotes, right?
I put, yes,
And it's important that you put in quotes because that's actually what she said.
that'd be correct.
So she thought the anal contact was an accident.
That's what she said.
Right. She described the choking to you, right?
Yes,
She said he had both hands around her neck for approximately 2 minutes.
her words, yes.
Right. She said that she would have been dead had he done it any longer, right?
I believe so, yes. She was concerned about that, yes.
Right. Did she ever tell you or anyone else that she thought that he did it in a way that it wouldn't leave marks?
I don't recall that statement, no.
Have you ever heard that statement?
I don't believe so.
Okay. You show Jane Doe 3 the photo lineup, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And she did not identify Mr. Winslow, did she?
She did not.
She told you that she'd seen the suspect twice total.
That'd be correct.
And she spoke with him both times, right?
Yes,
And she specifically said that none of the photos that you showed her were the suspect, right?
well, that's correct.
Okay. And the tattoos that we saw in Court's Exhibit 43 of Mr. Winslow's arms, the tattoos, yeah. None of those tattoos are blue, are they? They're the standard tattoo green, right?
I'd call them darker, I'd even call them black. If you like green, that's better too. They're not, I don't see blue, no.
Right, you see a little orange,
Yes,
and you see a little very, very light green, right?
I think there's some yellow and green in there, yeah.
Okay. And the rest of the tribal tattoo is the standard, what we call tattoo green, right?
It's all one color, yes.
Now, you said that you saw some surveillance where Mr. Winslow got his car washed, right?
Yes,
Now, that would occurred actually 3 months after Jane Doe 1 allegedly bled all over his car, right?
about 3 months, yes.
Okay. And, well, people with nice cars get their car washed, detailed, right?
I think so, yeah.
And did you interview the detailer to see how often he would come out to the house and detail the car?
I never met the detailer. I never identified him. I never spoke with him. It might have been very consistent. I don't know.
And did any of you or any of your agents ask the detailer, did he clean any blood out of the car?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did they ask him, did he clean any bodily fluids out of the car?
None of them spoke with him.
Okay. And just so we know, technically you can't really clean blood out of a car or any object, right? Because luminol can still show that there was blood there, right?
Objection, lacks foundation, and calls for speculation.
If you know.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
I know in my training, we don't use luminol, we use Blue Star, I found out. In my training, the RE agents that they use can frequently bring out blood that's been washed down, covered up, painted over, and then at other times we've had it not show up blood at all that we knew was there. So I probably a more expert person would answer that better for you.
And, but you or none of your agents went and questioned the detail guy, right? The car washer.
That's why I said yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever talk to the man that you saw take the car? You said that he drove off with I forget what court exhibit it was, but you said there was a man who ended up driving the Hummer away and you never saw it again, is that right?
I didn't see it back at the house, but a man drove it away, yes.
And you spoke to him and you realized that he's a licensed car dealer, right?
Oh, I didn't speak to him. Two other detectives spoke with him.
All right, and they found out that he was a licensed car dealer, right?
I didn't verify a license. Based on conversation, I believe he deals in cars on a regular basis.
In fact, he was the man that gave Mr. Winslow the car, right?
I didn't interview him.
Did you learn that from any of your detectives that interviewed him?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
Sustained, you do not need to answer.
When you forensically processed the car, did you find any blood in the car?
I did not find any blood in the car, no.
Okay. And when you searched the house, did you find a gun?
Well, I didn't search the house, but the people that did search the house, I don't recall them impounding any weapons at all.
No weapons at all. If I repeat, moment, Sean?
Okay.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to show you this photo, which is going to be court's exhibit number. Next to the quarter.
Oh, has it not been marked yet?
May I
No,
give
it has
that,
not.
may I give that court's exhibit number 115?
115. I'm going to show you court's exhibit number 115. Do you recognize the people depicted in this photo?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you recognize that being at the preliminary hearing?
I believe that's at the prelim, yes.
Okay.
Or one of the showings.
Oh, well, the record's going to reflect you're showing it to him on a tablet. Do we have a hard piece of paper that has the photo on it so we can actually mark it?
That's a good question.
Or do you just want to mark your tablet?
No, we're gonna.
Or can you?
117? Okay, correction, Your Honor, for that exhibit that was just presented by Attorney Watkins, that will be court's exhibit number 117.
Okay, and that was the one you showed the witness, correct, Mr.
Yes, Your
Watkins?
Honor.
Okay,
With the court's permission, we do have it loaded up to show the jury. We could get a hard copy.
That's fine.
Back to later. Thank
You can provide a hard copy later. Do you want to put it on the screen or not? Okay, so this will be court exhibit 117.
Now, that's Mr. Winslow at the preliminary hearing, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is his head shaved, like Jane Doe 1 said?
No, his head's not shaved, no.
And you were there present at that preliminary hearing of Jane Doe 1, right?
I was there for the prelim where Jane Doe 1 testified. Yes, I was.
And that's how Mr. Winslow looked that day, right?
Yes.
with his hair exactly like that.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, is he your investigating officer today?
If he may be, yes, thank you.
All right, so you can resume your seat at council table. All right, next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people now call Angela Rosa.
All right.
He has a bunch of videos. Down.
Do we have a hard copy of that? Do we have a hard copy? Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
My apologies, Your Honor. Ms. Rosa has stepped aside, so the people would now call Brandy Silverthorne.
Okay.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Brandy Silverthorne, BrandySilverthorn.
Thank you.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Silverthorne.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I am the Senior Forensic Evidence Technician with the San Diego Sheriff's Department.
How long have you worked with the San Diego Sheriff's Department?
I've been with the Sheriff's Department since 2011.
Can you tell them what your duties include?
My primary responsibility is the identification, preservation, documentation, and collection of evidence at crime scenes. If I'm not doing those duties, then I also do latent print development on items of evidence in the lab.
Are you actually a fingerprint technician that allows you to be able to do comparisons?
I do not do the comparisons.
What do you mean when you say that you work with fingerprints?
So I do latent print development, which means on items of evidence that are collected from the crime scene. I will process those using different techniques to try to develop prints that may be present on an item of evidence.
Are you a criminalist?
I am not.
What is a criminalist?
A criminalist is a scientist in the lab. They have a 4-year hard science degree in chemistry or biology, something like that. And they do the analysis of the work that we bring in, the evidence that we bring in. So an example would be a DNA analyst, a firearms examiner, something like that.
So you, as a senior field evidence technician with the Sheriff's Department, is it fair to say that you would then respond to a location in order to properly seize and secure and identify and itemize all the various things that are being collected in the course of investigation?
That would be correct.
Were you in fact assigned to the investigation into a sexual assault that had led to a search warrant that was being executed in the 1300 block of Lake Drive on June 14th, 2018?
Yes, I was.
Prior to that point in time, had you participated in the investigation with the sexual assault unit in any capacity?
I had not.
Can you just tell the jury in terms of what you were then privy to at that point? Were you asked to conduct a walkthrough first of all of the items that were being identified by various members of law enforcement?
Yes, so during that day, I was asked to attend a briefing prior to the execution of the search warrant. And then once the search warrant was executed, I responded to the residents and assisted with that search warrant. In doing that, I took photographs of the residents. We call them overall photographs of the entire residence before a search was conducted. And then working with my partners on the law enforcement side, the detectives and deputies conducted a search, identified items of evidence, and we identified those items with yellow placards so that I could take additional photographs of where those items were located.
And did you do that on June 14th?
Yes.
And when you say that you're working with your partners that are the law enforcement officers, is it fair to say that it's a team effort in terms of locating something that may be of interest in the case and documenting where it was located?
That's correct.
Can you just explain to the jury how that happens? Is it basically a detective walking along saying, hey, what about that?
Yes, in this case, we had a large area, and so what we had decided as a team was the detectives and the deputies would take a yellow placard and they would conduct a search in a particular area. If they identified an item of evidence that they felt may or may not be relevant, they wanted to collect it, they would lay the yellow placard next to the item that they wanted collected. I would then come into the room and take additional photographs of that item before it was packaged and collected.
Now, in terms of the overall photographs that you took, did you in fact take a photograph from the outside perspective, outside of the wall that encloses the property?
I did.
Let me just have a moment, Your Honor, so we can switch over for the exhibit.
All right.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 49 for identification. It's been previously shown. Is this the photograph that you took of the overall area?
Yes, it is.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 51 for identification. Looking here, do you see two items that have been identified by placard that were located within the residence?
Yes.
Can you just describe for the jury where this is within the residence?
Yes. When you came in the front door to the residence, if you turned to the left, there was a dining area and a kitchen area to the left. This area is against the left wall of that area between the dining room and the kitchen.
And looking at the two items, can you see what the placards, or what placards were used to differentiate them, beginning with the one on the left?
Yes, these two items were identified with placards D and E.
And in terms of the articles or the items that are directly next to the placard, what are those that are laying on the ground?
The item that was identified with placard letter D is a blue backpack, and the item that is identified with placard letter E is a pair of shoes.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 52 for identification, does that have a slightly different perspective of the same two items?
Yes, this is just another location shot from a different angle.
I'm sorry, which number was that last
That
time?
was 52, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And now showing Court's Exhibit 53 for identification, what does that show?
This is a close-up view of the item that was lettered E, and it's this pair of shoes.
Showing you now Court's Exhibit 54 for identification. What are we seeing here?
This is a view showing the blue backpack that was identified with letter D, and we are now going through the backpack to conduct an inventory of what is in the backpack.
And when you say we, are you still working with your law enforcement officer team?
Yes.
And do you see that the individual who's at least opening the backpack is wearing gloves?
Yes.
Is that standard protocol?
Yes.
And do you see that there is a sheet with handwritten notations that's to the right?
Yes.
What's that?
This is, we call it a receipt and inventory. It's a documentation of the items of evidence that were collected, and we document those items as we collect them.
And you can see that there are a number of placards with different letters associated with it. Were all of those being used in the collection of evidence that day at the Winslow residence?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 55 for identification. We're still talking about the blue backpack that was item D, is that right?
That's correct.
Does that show the contents of the exterior zipper area?
Yes, it does.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 56 for identification. Is that another view of the contents of the backpack?
Yes.
And showing you Courts Exhibit 57 for identification. Is that the interior zipper area?
Yes.
And showing you Courts Exhibit 58 for identification. Is that the main compartment of the backpack?
Yes.
Now, showing you Courts Exhibit 59 for identification. Does that have the contents of the backpack now laid out?
Yes.
Did that include each of these things, a garage door opener, a handheld garment, GPS device, things of that nature?
Yes.
Now showing you Courts Exhibit 60 for identification, is that item D in a close-up view?
Yes, it is.
What did you do with these items when they were being collected from the residents?
Actually, this might be a good point to stop for switching gears, so we're going to go ahead and take our morning recess. We're going to be in recess for 20 minutes, not 15, but 20.
and take those back to the crime lab where I do a complete inventory of all the items of evidence that were collected. And then I write a report and I impound those items with our property and evidence unit.
In addition to the blue backpack and its contents that we saw, and the riding shoes that, in the photographs that I was showing you, did you also personally seize and inventory a number of electronic devices from the residence?
Yes, I did.
Did that include a DVR set that was attached to a surveillance system?
I would have to refer to my notes to see, but I know I did collect a lot of electronic items from the residents.
And in terms of all of the electronic items that you did seize, did that include laptop computers?
Yes.
Were there a number of Apple manufactured products that were both laptops but then also cell phones?
Yes.
Were there gaming systems that were impounded?
Yes.
Was there a Garmin, a GPS device?
Yes.
Was there a GoPro camera impounded?
I do not recall if there was a GoPro. Again, I'd have to look through my
Okay, would you refresh your recollection first as to the DVR system?
Yes.
So please refer to your report.
Thank you. So in my report, I do find that I collected a black Luma DVR device, and I also collected several Arachnus networks devices and some Control 4 devices that I'm not familiar with what the purpose of those things are.
Can you spell that for the court reporter? You said Arachnus?
Yes, it's ARAKNIS networks.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Is it fair to say that each of the items that you collected, you then impounded under the sheriff's case number associated with the case, ending 974?
Yes, that's correct.
And in terms of the inventory process, once you've impounded it, do you assign an individual item number to everything that's been collected?
Yes, I do.
For the sheriff's, in the evidence room, the property and evidence facility, how is it that those are identified in addition to the item number associated with the case itself?
When I assign an item number to an item of evidence, it's called a forensic identification number or a FIN number. Each FIN number also gets a unique barcode, and those barcodes are assigned through our property and evidence unit.
And does the FIN, the FIN, as well as the barcode, do they also have a verbal description of what the item is that's being impounded?
Yes, when I impound the evidence, I place a label onto the item that is a detailed description of what's included in that package.
And is that how it then is tracked for any potential forensic examination of those items later?
The barcode is used to either be checked out and checked back in if analysis is to be done on that item of evidence.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
So, good morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
Thank you.
So you basically are you come in with a camera, right? Take pictures of things?
That's correct.
And you also lift evidence, like you do fingerprint lifts?
That's correct.
Just like on TV? Is it really scotch tape and glue?
Yes, we do use adhesive tape and super glue that you would find in Home Depot.
There you go. All
There
right,
you
so you go take latent fingerprint lifts. You take photos of evidentiary items, right?
Correct?
You're not making an independent, you don't make an independent assessment of what has evidentiary value, isn't that correct?
I work with a team of detectives based on the circumstances in the case to determine what may or may not be relevant to the case, and then determine with the detectives what items should be collected.
Okay, but in this case, you basically were shown items and basically told to take pictures of them.
A majority of the items in this case, yes. The detective had previously identified the item of evidence and asked for it to be collected.
For instance, the photo of the backpack, correct? I mean, that you were told to take a picture of that.
Yes.
And you were told that had evidentiary value,
Yes.
right? You were not told whether there were any other backpacks inside of the house.
No, I was not told if there were other backpacks other than me going through and doing, overall photographs of the residence. I was not told to collect any other items.
Right. So you essentially, you were shown a blue backpack, told to take a picture of a blue backpack, and that's what you did.
That's correct.
Likewise with your cycling shoes,
Yes.
same thing.
Yes.
Right. You testified that you took some electronic devices, or at least you impounded those.
That's correct.
You made sure that they maintained their integrity of the actual machine itself.
Yes.
You didn't turn them on at the side, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you process those for fingerprints?
I did not.
You also did you do anything with the car, the truck? The Hummer.
Yes, I did.
What did you do with the Hummer?
I was asked to process the Hummer. I did overall photographs of that. I also processed it for latent prints using a visual examination and black powder.
Okay, visual examination, what is that?
Basically, I used my eyes. I would do a visual examination to see if I could find or see anything that was obvious. I also use a flashlight at an oblique angle, which is very shallow angle, which sometimes will help us visualize prints that may be present. And then after that, I use black powder and I apply that with a brush, hoping to bring out any prints that might be present there.
If you do this inside the vehicle, you do it in areas where a person would be most likely to touch, right? Correct?
That's correct.
So you want to be on the console, right?
Yes.
Maybe around where the radio is or the music player is, right?
Yes.
Maybe the glove box.
So I did process certain areas, including the door panels, the door frames of the front passenger, rear passenger side, and rear driver side of the vehicle, as well as the center console and the gear shifter.
Okay, specifically from the passenger side, did you find any latent prints that you could use?
I did obtain 5 latent lift cards from the passenger side of the vehicle. I submitted those into property and evidence, and I'm unaware if they were examined by a latent print examiner.
Okay, so now when you say that you found 5 prints, are you telling me that in your opinion those were prints which could be analyzed?
No, I think I said 5 latent lift cards.
Latent lift cards, sorry.
Right, which, yes, I saw what I believe to be ridge detail. As to the value of the ridge detail that was present on each lift card, that would be left to a latent print examiner.
But as far as your role was, you believe that there was something of evidentiary value on the lift card.
I did visualize ridge detail, and then it's up to them to determine the value.
And by the way, I know, but for the jury's purposes, what is a lift card?
A lift card is exactly like we talked about at the beginning of this with adhesive tape, clear adhesive tape. So I use the black powder. I develop a print that is present on the surface. I lay the adhesive tape over that print, and then I remove the tape and place it onto a white lift card. And so when I say I had 5 lift cards, I had 5 of those with tape adhered to the latent lift card.
So there would be 1 print on each card? Or
No, I wouldn't say 1 print per card. I would just say that there was ridge detail present on each lift. And then as to the number of prints that may be present there, again, that would be up to the latent print examiner.
Okay, so in your role, have you also been called to check for the presence of blood inside a house or a vehicle?
Yes.
What would you do to make that determination?
So there are several things we can use to search for blood. If we're looking for visible blood, we would just use a very bright white light looking for visible blood. And then if we're looking for latent blood or blood that we can't see, we would have to use a chemical to possibly have a reaction with any blood that might be present, which causes it to luminesce, and then we can see that area.
Can't use big words like that. Luminesce means what?
It just means that the area, there's a reaction between our chemical and a component of blood that causes that area to glow. It glows like a light bluish color, so it does have to be done in darkness so that we can visualize that.
How long you been employed in your position?
Well, I've been with the Sheriff's Department since 2011, but I've been doing this work specifically between the Sheriff's Department and the San Diego Police Department since 2007. So about 12 years.
12 years, it's fair for me to say you've been to a lot of crime scenes.
That's correct.
And you've taken a lot of, you took courses on blood spatter and blood stain analysis.
Well, I have had courses in bloodstain pattern documentation. I have had those training classes.
And you've been to crime scenes which have some have a small amount of blood, others have an enormous amount of blood, correct?
That's correct.
And you would agree with me that blood is one of those items which, that there can be minute remnants or, large puddles, essentially, right?
Correct.
And sometimes you can detect blood which isn't actually visible to the naked eye.
That's correct.
There's blood can travel through the air to all different parts of an area, correct?
Correct.
In other words, so if somebody were trying to clean up blood, they might be cleaning up in an area where they thought the blood was, but it could actually have traveled, it could be arterial spread, it could be fragments which go in all different directions. Right?
Yes, somebody could try to clean up blood in one area and not realize that there is blood in another area and potentially miss that area.
In this vehicle, did you locate any items which might have some type of evidence you're valuing regarding blood?
So in this case, I was working with a criminalist at the time, and so he did an examination of the vehicle for visible blood.
Okay. But
And
you weren't part of this?
I was present during the time that he did it.
Okay. Was any blood found?
So he found two areas that, I'm sorry, one area that reacted with the chemical and luminesced or glowed, that blue color, and so we sampled from that area.
Okay, and what criminalist was this?
That was criminalist Darren Bowles.
So who would do the analysis of that?
So I collected the stains, I collected the swabs that criminalist Bowles collected, and then I impound those with property and evidence. The lab request for the analysis of that is then assigned by a DNA supervisor.
Okay, so you don't know the outcome of that particular finding?
I do not.
So that would take another individual to come in and tell this jury whether or not there was actually blood found there or if it was just a dark substance.
That's correct.
And that happens, do you agree?
Yes, I have seen that happen.
And by that meaning it not be blood, but just some other
That's correct.
substance.
Yes.
All right, so one of the other things you did was swab for DNA inside the vehicle.
That's correct.
Explain to the jury what you did as far as, first of all, what is swabbing for DNA as far as your role goes?
Okay. Swabbing for DNA means that I take a sterile swab and some distilled water. I get the swab just a little bit wet, a drop or two of the distilled water. And then I swab an area that I'm interested in for what we call contact or touch DNA, meaning somebody handled that area or touched that area. I take that wet swab and I really swab the area such as a door handle, a seatbelt buckle, something of that nature. And then I place that swab, it has a plastic cap on it. I close the plastic cap, put it into an envelope, and then again it gets inventoried, written on my report, and submitted to property and evidence.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but there are various ways that you can get a DNA sample, essentially?
I'm not sure I
It's a
understand.
bad question. In other words, there are several ways to leave DNA. How's that?
Yes, that's correct.
So you can get DNA through blood,
Yes.
hair follicles,
If the root is present, we can get nuclear DNA from hair.
you can get it from skin,
Yes.
skin samples, I mean, it's scrapings, things like that.
Yes.
And you talked about contact DNA also, it's just somebody touching an area, right?
Correct.
Okay, so, and that type of DNA that we described, a lot of it is not visible to the naked eye, you would agree?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so what you do then is essentially back to the vehicle. You've got the vehicle and you take swabs from areas where you know a person would most likely be, correct?
Yes.
So for the driver's side, you know, the steering wheel, the door handle, the seats, correct?
Yes.
So specifically in this case, for the passenger seat, right? The passenger seat, the front passenger seat, did you take any DNA swabs for the front passenger seat?
Yes.
Okay, where did you take them from?
I would need to refer to my report.
If it refreshes your recollection, you could
Yeah.
read through the report, I would have no objection to that.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. You can read directly from your report by stipulation.
Can you tell me where you obtained the swabs?
Yes. So item 9.3 was one DNA swab kit containing 2 swabs of possible DNA evidence collected from the interior front passenger door panel in the black Hummer.
Okay, just wait, stop there. So where is that? Explain what part of the car is that?
So this would be the door panel, the interior side of the door panel. So it would be like the window sill, just inside the window, and then the area where like you might rest your arm on the door panel. So it would be those areas.
Okay, and you were actually able to extract some DNA samples from there?
Oh no, I don't do the extraction of the DNA. I just swab the area for possible DNA.
And so when you swab it for possible DNA, you just do an entire area?
Yes, so in this case, I took 2 swabs because it is a large area. So I took 2 swabs simultaneously and I swabbed those areas on the door panel.
Okay. And I guess that's the point. You don't know whether you have any DNA.
That's correct.
Right, so you're sort of like you're taking an educated guess where somebody might be and then hoping to find something.
That's correct, and then it would be submitted later to a DNA analyst who would do the analysis of the swabs.
Okay, so 9.4.
9.4 is one DNA swab kit containing 2 swabs of possible DNA evidence collected from the front passenger seatbelt buckle and latch.
Okay, and that would be basically somebody putting a seatbelt on. They manipulate the first the belt, then the buckle, and then the clasp, right?
That's correct.
And that's something you've done in the past.
Yes,
And so you swab those areas,
I did.
the whole seat belt too.
No, just the seatbelt buckle, so the little plastic piece that slides along the belt, that plastic piece there, and the clasp area.
Okay. And 9.5.
One DNA swab kit containing 2 swabs of possible DNA evidence collected from the interior rear passenger side door panel.
So that's the same thing you described in the front passenger. It's on the rear side.
The rear passenger side, yes.
And 9.6.
One DNA swab kit containing 2 swabs of possible DNA evidence collected from the rear passenger side seatbelt buckle and latch.
Same thing as in the front seat.
That's
Right.
correct.
And so it's fair for me to say that you did the same sort of analysis for the driver's side and then the driver's rear side, right?
So I did the rear driver's side, but I did not do the driver compartment area.
Why is that?
After discussion, it was determined that we were looking for somebody that was not the owner of the vehicle or driver of the vehicle, so it would be more likely we would find that DNA in the passenger areas of the vehicle.
Right, so you would expect the driver's side to have essentially the owner's or the driver's DNA, pretty much all of it.
That's correct.
Everybody in here would have their DNA on the handles and the steering wheel and the stick shift, things like that, right?
Yes.
So what you're looking for are people who are not the driver and their DNA in different parts of the vehicle.
That's correct.
So did you know that this was a sexual assault allegation?
I did.
Okay, so did you know that, that somebody had claimed that it happened inside the vehicle?
I did.
And so was that reason that you did the DNA swabs that you described to the jury here?
Yes.
Says that's why you did you do the back seat too?
We examined the back seat. I did the swabs on the door panels and the seat belts for both seats in the back. And then we did an examination for visible blood and semen. And then on a different occasion, we tested with the chemical for latent blood.
Okay, so that was all tested. This vehicle was apparently, it was tested for blood, it was tested for DNA, and then retested again, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Did you test the back seat for blood also?
The criminalist that I worked with did a visual examination of the area for visible blood on the first occasion of processing the vehicle, and we did not locate any apparent blood.
Let me ask you this. You saw the interior of the vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Okay, the interior of the vehicle was dark colored?
Yes.
Was it black or was it gray? Do you remember?
I believe it was a very dark charcoal gray or black. It was very dark.
Pretty close to black, right?
Yes.
So were there floor mats in the front passenger seat, if you recall?
I don't recall.
I think we all agree there's probably carpet in there, something, the floor is carpet.
Yes.
Right, and it's dark.
That's correct.
So and blood, when you see in crime scenes, blood is essentially the dark colored sort of brownish look, right?
That's correct.
And wouldn't really show up on the black very well.
Well, we can visualize blood if it's visible blood. We can visualize it. We use a very bright white light, and it does help us during the examination of the vehicle.
Well, that's the point. You're a professional, right?
Yes.
All right, so you have the tools and equipment to actually look for, remnants of blood on the floorboards, correct?
Yes.
So in other words, an untrained observer looking down is looking at basically a black carpet, essentially.
Yes, it might be very difficult to see in those circumstances.
Okay. And anything further?
All right, any redirect?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
So Rick, since we went into this area, some of your follow-up, I just have some questions to ask you regarding the processing of the vehicle. To your knowledge, was that vehicle in fact seized on June 14th of 2018?
Yes, it was.
That would be the same day that you were personally at the residence collecting the items that we discussed on direct examination?
That's correct.
Did the initial processing of the vehicle take place on June 19th of 2018?
I believe we processed it initially on June 20th.
And then on June 19th were arrangements made to then process it on June 20th?
Yes, that's correct.
And you mentioned that there was a criminalist who was involved in the processing, and you've also mentioned now that there were 2 times in which the vehicle was examined, correct?
Yes.
Was the criminalist who assisted with the examination on June 20th, was that Stephen Liu?
Yes, it was.
And then on the later date in October, was that Darren Bowles?
Yes, it was.
Now, you're the senior forensic evidence technician, but they are the criminalists who worked within the crime lab, correct?
That's correct.
And in terms of your collection of any potential items of interest, that would then be forensically examined by the DNA analysts at a later date, correct?
Yes.
But in terms of your collection of evidence, starting on June 20th, did you photograph the actual Hummer H2 on that day in its condition, at least as you took it at the property or the sheriff's impound lot?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked for identification as Courts Exhibit 71. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is a photograph of the front of the Hummer that we processed inside our garage.
And does that have paper plates that are visible on the front end in the lower portion of the vehicle?
Yes.
And what does that state? The paper plates, if you're able to see it.
I believe it says Champion Motorworks. Motoring, I'm sorry.
Champion Motoring?
Champion Motoring.
It didn't have an actual license plate, did it?
No, it did not.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 72 for identification. Is that the rear or the passenger side view of the vehicle?
Yes,
And did you take these photographs?
I did.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 73 for identification. Is that a view with the door open of the front passenger seat of the vehicle?
Yes.
Can you just indicate with the pointer that's there at the witness stand, the areas that you swabbed for potential presence of DNA that you were discussing with Mr. Carlos?
So on this photograph, it's a little difficult to see the door panel, but I would have swabbed the armrest area and the windowsill area on the inside of this panel of the door. And then also on the left side of the photograph here, you can see the plastic seatbelt piece that slides up and down the belt. I swabbed that. And then this latch area here down towards more center of the photograph.
And you're indicating the seatbelt latch?
That's correct.
Showing you a close-up view of the same area on Courts Exhibit 74 for identification. Is that the front passenger seat?
Yes.
Did you swab the seat cushion areas, or did you simply swab the seatbelt itself?
I did not swab the seat cushion areas, just the seatbelt latch.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 75 for identification. Did you swab any areas visible here for potential DNA?
Other than the seatbelt buckle and latch, no, I did not.
And this would be the front passenger seat with the lower seat cushion area and the floorboard visible, is that right?
Yes.
Now showing you Courts Exhibit 76 for identification. To orient us, is this now the rear passenger compartment, specifically focused in the foreground on the right rear passenger seat?
Yes, the rear passenger side.
And did you swab these areas for any potential DNA?
Again, in this photograph on the far left, showing the plastic piece of the seatbelt buckle and then the latch that's towards the center of the photograph.
Did you attempt to obtain any potential DNA from the floorboard areas?
I did not. I did receive 2 items of evidence from Criminalist Stephen Liu at the time that were possible DNA samples, and I received those from him.
When you say they're possible DNA samples, did you in fact impound miscellaneous trace evidence lifts collected from the front and rear seats?
Yes.
And is that what you're referring to?
No.
What is it that you're referring to as being the DNA samples that you received from the vehicle?
Yes, so there were 2 stains that were located by Criminalist Stephen Liu that he believed to be relevant. And so he collected those stains and then turned the stain collection kits over to me for impound.
And the stain collection kits, when you say that a criminalist determines it to be relevant, are you describing the process by which a criminalist looks to determine whether or not there's any presence of biological material, either blood or potentially semen?
Yes.
And in terms of your impounding of that, the stains that were suspected to be biological material, were they then impounded into evidence and submitted for forensic evaluation?
Yes.
And that would be a DNA analyst who would be able to testify to those findings, correct?
That's correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, anything further, Mr. Carlos? All right, can this witness be excused?
She may.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people now call Angela Rosa.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Angela Rosa, Angela Roza.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Direct examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Rosa.
Good morning.
Can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
Sure. I currently work for the San Diego Police Department as a computer forensic examiner. I'm assigned to the Regional Computer Forensics Lab.
Can you tell the jury what the Regional Computer Forensics Lab is?
We are a task force that's headed by the FBI. We have 13 local and federal law enforcement agencies that are comprised on that task force, and essentially we do any computer-related or digital evidence examinations for state and local agencies and federal agencies within the San Diego and Imperial counties.
Are there various RCFL laboratories throughout the state of California?
Yes, there are.
Is there an RCFL laboratory, for example, in Riverside County?
It's part of the one from Orange County. Yes.
And you mentioned that you cover, at least at the lab that you work at, you cover San Diego and Imperial counties, right?
Yes, sir.
And then there's other labs that would cover, for example, Orange County and Riverside County, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, can you explain to the jury some of the training that you've received in order to qualify yourself as a forensic technician in this particular area of computer forensics?
Sure. When I was assigned to the lab, I didn't have any of the specific classes under my belt that were required. And so as a trainee, they send you to all the classes that you need. Some of them are put on by the FBI in our internal classes, and some are vendor specific. So as a trainee, I would go to, one was called CART 101, which is essentially an overview of the computer analysis response team. It would teach me what that is basically and how documentation should be for the different pieces of evidence and reporting as such. Access Data is one of the vendors of some of the software that we use. So some of the classes for the training were actually put on by Access Data, and that included one to show the overview of how to use it, as well as one that was specific to all the Windows forensics artifacts, one for internet artifacts. I also have completed A+ and Net+, which are industry standard trainings. Following those, we would be sent to CART practicals, where they would actually give us a mock examination to take back to the lab to complete, and then do the entire examination on and write up, and then we would go to moot court to testify about the findings that we had. Following that, I was certified as a forensic examiner. Also, during that time, I was working with a mentor within our lab and working on actual evidence and doing all the reportings, and then following getting my actual authorization to be the computer forensic examiner for the lab. I've been that for close to 10 years between being a trainee and now. I was assigned there in March of 2009. So I've been an examiner, I've been an operations manager, which is basically a team leader. We have two groups of examiners in the lab, and the operations manager essentially assigns the cases out to the person who he or she thinks would be the best person suited for that type of exam based on the type of content that was submitted for exam. I'm currently the deputy director, and for 6 months I was the acting director when our former director stepped down.
So in terms of the laboratory, the RCFL here locally, where is it based?
Right now we're out of the FBI building off of Vista Sorrento Parkway. We just moved there 6 years ago to the new building.
Is that the large building that's visible off the 5 freeway as you're getting through the Torrey Pines area?
Yes.
Now, when you were, at least initially, you talked about some of the the coursework that you took and some of the classes that you took in order to qualify yourself as a forensic examiner. Over the course of your over 10 years at the RCFL, have you actually gone and promoted up to being an operations manager and then the deputy director?
Yes, and in that time frame, there were also additional classes that I had to take. They require at least 2 per year. I have about 700 hours of training from the time I was assigned there till now.
And in terms of the types of devices that RCFL examines, can you just give the jury a good understanding of what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis?
As far as types of digital evidence that we actually examine, the computers and their associated hard drives or any loose media that could be associated with those, cameras and SD cards that could contain those photos or videos, DVRs, cell phones. We've had actual infotainment systems from vehicles that we've done digital forensics on, so it's pretty much the gamut. And there have also been some drones that have been requested.
In terms of how they're handled and how the requests are made, can you just walk us through the process when items of evidence are submitted to the RCFL for examination?
Sure. So a case agent, detective, special agent would bring any digital evidence to us along with a service request and their legal authority that would authorize us to do the forensic exam.
Would that be something such as a search warrant?
Yes.
And
Search
when you
warrant or
refer to
consent.
legal authority?
Yes. They'll submit the items to us. We package them in anti-static bags, assign a master container inventory barcode number so that everything is identifiable. That is put into an electronic evidence system. The actual service request would then come to me, and I review each and every legal authority for each and every case that's submitted, and then it goes to the operation manager and then to the forensic examiner. Once the forensic examiner gets the request, they get into contact with the person who submitted it and answer any questions that they may have in addition to whatever was requested on the service request. And then they begin the inventory and documentation. We photograph everything, assign specific barcodes to each piece of evidence. So like a computer is going to get a barcode for the container, and then it's going to get a barcode for every piece of media or anything that's attached to it that could be examined. Following that, the actual media would be write blocked, either with a hardware write blocker or with a software write blocker, so that nothing could happen to the original evidence, and to maintain that integrity. And we create what's called an image. It's a bit-for-bit copy of everything that's on that specific media.
Ms. Rosa, let me stop you there in
Yes,
terms
sir.
of the imaging now process. So in order to make sure that the items are collected in a forensically sound manner, do you take steps to preserve against the possibility of corrupting the actual original evidence that's submitted?
Yes.
Is that why you image the hard drive or where the data may be stored onto a copy?
Right, and so we just have to make sure, like I said, that it's always write protected, so nothing can actually write to the original evidence.
When you're conducting these types of processes, are you using certain software programs that are widely used within this area in order to be able to prevent against any corruption of the data that's submitted?
Yes.
Once you have that image copy, what do you do with it?
Once we have the image, which is saved to a hard drive that had been previously wiped, and that's important too because we ensure that no previous case data is contained on a hard drive that we'll use for archival purposes. Once that happens, then we load the image into whatever software programs we think would be the best suited to parse the information. Like I said before, we have Access Data Lab, or FTK. That's one of the specific ones I used for this examination. We also have Internet Evidence Finder. And so what these programs do is basically parse out the different artifacts, many times into containers based on what type of thing they are. So it could go into internet items, it could go into videos, graphics. It also uses a DT search index, so everything's indexed as it's processed, and that enables keyword searching to enable a quicker exam, basically.
So, Ms. Rosa, for people who may not be as computer savvy or aware of computer science, and as a forensic examiner, can you explain when you're itemizing or kind of cataloging the items that may be there? Is that something that you're doing in order to just make it more user-friendly to be able to search for possible information?
I believe that's why they made the programs the way they did, because it is very user-friendly. There's an Explore tab, which would show basically how you would look at your own computer in the Windows Explorer or in the Macintosh Finder. So you can see your directory structure and your desktop and where your documents are. So there's that, and then it also breaks it down into the other categories, like I mentioned, as well as a search area where you can run keywords, and then it will respond with where those locations are.
You mentioned that as part of your process for conducting a forensic examination of different data storage devices, that you have conversations with the case agent or the detective who's assigned to the case. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you coordinate with Detective John Johnson, seated in court, when you were conducting the imaging process and the search of various devices in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
And did you speak to him regarding potential areas that you may be looking for information that would possibly be relevant to the investigation?
Yes.
When you discussed that potential search with Detective Johnson, is it fair to say that there was a large amount of, or a large number of electronic devices that had been submitted to the Regional Computer Forensic Laboratory?
Well, for us, or for me, for what I was assigned, there were 4 items. They were all for Macintosh or Apple computers. 2 were laptops, and then 1 was an all-in-one iMac, and 1 was an older Power Mac G5. So yes, it's a lot to do for one exam, but there have been more and there have been less.
In terms of the electronic devices that were submitted for analysis, were there also devices that were submitted to the CATCH team, C-A-T-C-H?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what the CATCH team is?
CATCH is another basically high-tech task force, but it's run by the sheriff, or excuse me, by the DA's office. So it's the Computer and Technology Crime High-Tech Task Force. I believe that's what it stands for. I've never worked there, and none of our examiners actually work there. We have our own task force, but they do similar to what we do.
Would that be a separate task force of certified forensic examiners, at least?
Yes.
And you mentioned also that the RCFL that you work at is here in San Diego in Imperial County, and then were there also electronic devices that were submitted as essentially overflow to RCFL for Riverside and Orange County?
I'm not sure.
Okay. In terms of the specific examinations that you conducted, you mentioned the personal laptops, is that right?
Yes.
Did you in fact examine a Apple iMac?
Yes.
Did you examine an Apple MacBook?
I tried to, but the media was encrypted.
Can you just explain to the jury in terms of encryption of personal devices, what happens at the RCFL and the efforts you make to attempt to get into those devices?
Sure. We encounter a variety of types of encryption. For this in particular, with Apple products, File Vault and File Vault 2 is something that could be encountered, and if it's enabled, then it does full disk encryption as far as File Vault 2 is concerned. And to compound that, there's also a new file system called Apple File System, the APFS. So it really makes things a lot tougher when you're doing the exam, and it's typically pretty difficult to decrypt without some type of custom dictionary. So that's what we had to do in this case for the 2 laptops that were submitted. Another one of our examiners who is an expert at various decrypting techniques and generating custom content dictionaries and using really a variety of suites, does a lot of the decryption attacks for us, and he was able to decrypt one of them.
Did you also receive a cell phone that had been at least initially processed by the Sheriff's Department and then submitted to you for review and assistance in your
Yes.
own downloads of these other devices?
Yes, so I asked for the cell phone to be submitted so that we could use it to create that custom dictionary for the decryption attack. I couldn't do an examination on that cell phone because it had already previously been examined, and it would have been a violation of our own internal re-examination policy.
And when you say that there's been an examination, are you aware that there had been a Cellbrite download already conducted by the Sheriff's Department
Yes, sir.
crime analyst?
Yes, sir.
Now, in terms of the processing of the Apple iMac, that was the one where you were successfully able to access the data, is that correct?
Yes.
When you are cataloging the information contained on a computer, did you follow the same process that you were describing where you create a mirror image and then access that data from the mirror image?
Yes.
When you coordinated with Detective Johnson, did you talk to him about whether or not any information regarding cycling activity or internet artifacts or email artifacts regarding cycling activity may be relevant to the investigation?
Yes.
Did you locate any information regarding cycling activity?
Yes, I did. I located a variety of artifacts, Twitter type of emails that were sent to the user's inbox referencing starting cycling and going pro in 2015. There were emails from Strava saying welcome to Strava in
Your Honor, at least as to the findings from the examination, perhaps we can address that and then address the...
Correct, yeah, overruled for now. She's just talking about the content of the examination, so overruled for now. Go ahead.
In terms of the welcome to Strava email accounts, what was the time frame that those were dated on the artifacts?
So the welcome to Strava email was sent, or received, I guess, September of 2014. And there was also a tweet that had been sent out. And again, this is from email artifacts about the tweet that said, I just signed up for Strava, and that was again September 2014.
In terms of the iMac that we're discussing, was there a user ID or a name associated with that iMac?
It was K2, like the letter K and the number 2.
Was there a computer name that was associated with it?
It was K2's iMac.
And were there email addresses that were associated with that computer?
Yes, K2Kane80@gmail.com and K2Jwinslow@gmail.com.
And
Okay,
the
can you repeat that
Yes.
first one? You said what, K280?
K2Kane, K2KANE80@gmail.com.
Okay, got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor. And were those the email accounts that you're referencing that received the emails around the 2014 timeframe noting welcome to Strava?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that there were various emails regarding Twitter activity. Can you describe what was located?
Again, one was from 2013, and it references using or starting cycling. Another was the fact that he tweeted, I just signed up for Strava.
And in terms of the user information for the Strava account, the email that stated welcome to Strava, was that sent to the K2 Gmail account that you just mentioned?
I'm not sure exactly which of the two email addresses it went to offhand, but it
Was it one of
to
the
one
two?
of those, yeah.
Okay, and both of them noting K2, correct?
Right.
Now, in terms of any additional email artifacts or internet artifacts regarding cycling, what else did you locate?
There was some registration for USA Cycling, another email talking about having the first amateur road race or first amateur race in January of 2015. There were receipts for a variety of Stinner bicycles, an email referencing a couple specialized bikes, specifically a Venge and a Shiv TT, like a time trial bike.
So, Ms. Rosa, let me just ask you, are you familiar with cycling?
Yes, sir.
How are you familiar with cycling?
I ride.
What does that mean?
Well, I guess in 2012 I started riding a road bike. It was the first time I'd ever ridden. My husband got me into it. And so I use the Strava app, and I've just basically used it as a fitness tool. Having had previous knee injuries, it's a better tool for me than running is. So that's why I do it.
When you're referencing some of these bicycles, can you explain to the jury, in terms of the receipts and the emails that were obtained on this laptop, what type of bicycles are those?
So a couple of them were road bikes. The Venge and one of the Stinners would be a typical road bike setup. One was a mountain bike, that was one of the Stinners. The TT would be a time trial bike. Typically those are the ones that are more aerodynamic and have different wheel sets to make it basically faster.
And in terms of the app that you mentioned, you are personally familiar with the Strava app, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What's the Strava application?
Objection. Foundation, Commission for Human Rights.
Establishing the foundation you are.
Overruled. They were attempting to lay the appropriate foundation. You can answer if you know.
So Strava is a mobile app that can be used to track a person's activities, including cycling, running, hiking, kayaking, skiing. It basically records the GPS route that you take. There are people who have created segments, and so a lot of times the users will measure themselves against other people who have completed those segments. It also enables the person using it to see what their top 3 scores are and gives virtual medals for that. It enables basically some trophies for top 10 of the segments, including, King of the Mountain, Queen of the Mountain, if you're the top person on that particular segment, regardless of your age or weight or anything. It's just an overall.
Is the application itself, is that something that's put onto a device?
Yes, you could use it straight from your phone, or you can have some type of GPS, like a Garmin or Forerunner, and then you can sync it to the Strava app. Sometimes you could do it through Garmin Connect, and then it'll download and sync to the Strava app. You can access Strava on the internet as well. It doesn't just have to be on the phone to be able to see what your activities were.
And in terms of accessing it, does it actually have a automatically generated report of the user's activities?
Yes.
Now, when you've used the Strava application, can you just describe how you used it?
I've used it both from my phone directly and also from using Garmin's. So when you use it on your phone, you just open up the application and then you would hit the record button and it asks you what type of activity you want to record. Typically it's either like a run or a cycle or a swim for the first ones that you can choose. And so you choose which one you want, and then it shows a map and gives you basically the little blue beacon of where you are. And then you hit start and it will basically route as you ride or run. And then when you're done, you hit finish and it will compile all the data and show you the map, show your average time, show you the amount of miles you went, the time of day, whatever types of information you have set. And when you use a Garmin, you can obviously have more items to be retained, and you can have a power meter on your bike, you can wear a heart rate monitor, and it all syncs to give you a better overview of the work that you put in.
And in terms of the GPS coordinates that are being automatically recorded when the user essentially hits the prompt of record, is that something that's then stored on the application platform itself that could be accessible through the internet or through the user's device?
Yes.
And when that is being recorded, in terms of your experience with the app, how is it that Strava obtains the GPS location information for the user when they're recording a ride?
So from the phone, it would be from the location services enabled on your phone for that application. If you're using a Garmin, then it would be when you actually upload that to the computer. If you physically connect it, all of the information is stored in that Garmin file, and then the GPS file that's on that Garmin, and then it would sync and upload.
In terms of your training experience as a forensic examiner, are you familiar with cell phone GPS technology?
Yes.
Can you just explain how a cell phone is able to be located in a particular geographic area based on GPS data?
Well, it's...
It may be common sense at this point, but if you can explain based on your experience.
Well, whatever I use it for, it's basically for maps, for directions, for Strava, and so my location services are enabled on my phone for those particular things, and so it will hit the various satellites to show me where I'm at, basically.
And is that the same technology that's used for the Strava application?
Yes.
Your Honor, now may be a good time. If the court would like me to continue.
But you want to take the afternoon break right now?
I think we can.
Yeah, we can. It's just a good stopping point.
This would be a natural place.
Okay, let's do that then. We're going to take our afternoon recess. Please remember the admonition, don't discuss the case.